Before I kick off, to Eugene, to Sergey, to Alex, who I've only known now for a couple of months, if we're going to be in this industry of manufacturing, the reason we manufacture has to matter. There's got to be a point to it. There's got to be value. And right now, I cannot see a greater challenge to our industry, to manufacturing, to be in than helping Ukraine, helping win a war, and then helping with the rebuild. And the three of you are champions of our industry right now. So really well done. You're rock stars, in my opinion. And thank you for allowing me and Speed3D to speak at your event. I've got 15 minutes. As Eugene said, I'm a former military man, so I like to stick to timings. So I'm going to crack on. Speed3D is a global additive manufacturing company founded in Australia with a presence in America, Australia, and in Europe. And we are somewhat of a smaller company within the industry, but we have what we know to be one of the most powerful technologies out there. Speed3D is the patent holder of cold spray additive manufacturing. So lots of cold spray companies out there. We're the only one right now that make parts with cold spray. And if I was to describe cold spray to you, it's taking metal powder, moving it at the speed of sound, and then it hits the build plate inside the printer. You can see two printers on the screen here. There's a robot arm. The powder comes out at Mach 3, hits the plate, and the part builds. We manipulate the robot arm to create the geometry. It's a simple process that doesn't involve melting at the point of impact, allowing us to print at really quite rapid pace. So if I was to say 100 grams a minute up to 45 kilograms, that's pretty quick. For freedom units, for our American friends, we're talking about building a part equivalent to 100 pounds in about 6 to 7 hours. We have a process with cold spray that's robust. So the printers you can see on the screen right now, they're designed for a factory. But over the last 3 years, these printers that you see have been out to the Australian bush, and they've been out in the American desert, and they've been placed on the ground by the US Army, the Australian Army, the British Army, and they've been using them to make actual genuine military metal parts of consequence. And because it's a robust system, you can drop it on the ground, you can plug it into your generator, and within 30 minutes, we're making parts. But the printers you see on the screen, they're designed for the factory. But Speed3D realized that we really had value to offer here for expeditionary manufacturing for the military. And that if we had a truly expeditionary unit, then we could give freedom to military engineers and military manufacturers to make parts at the point of need, as far forward as possible with the military engineers, making the parts the supply chain can't provide. And so here you see the next iteration of the printer, which was released this summer, called XSpeed. XSpeed's a shipping container with the printer inside, fully ruggedized, made for the military, lightproof, soundproof, and makes the exact same parts, up to 45 kilograms in about 6.5 hours. The sorts of parts that we're making are large metal parts. The cold spray system is best suited to making large parts and doing it quickly. We're not in the business of making parts that are small and delicate and light. Others can do that and do it very well. Cold spray is about making larger parts, heavier parts, getting them to near net shape, and then using manufacturing techniques, conventional manufacturing techniques afterwards to do the post-processing. So over the last couple of years, we've been making parts for the Australian Army, the Australian Special Forces, the British Army, the American Army, the American Navy. And let me show you some of the parts that we deal with. When I was Australian Army, one of my soldiers made this part, specialist tool for the HIMARS, for the US HIMARS. Now, we were on a deployment in the Australian outback. with the Australian Army, and the Australian Army doesn't have HIMARS, but we were exercising with the US Marine Corps, and they did have HIMARS. And they were looking to use the HIMARS for their culminating activity in a live fire exercise. And this piece of this specialist tool that you see that's broken, they didn't have a replacement for. And the nearest one was in Japan. And so they asked us, would it be possible for us to manufacture one? And how quickly could we do it? Now, you can't see the soldier all that clearly in that picture, but Nathan, who was one of my craftsmen, designed that part in under an hour, and he had it in the printer and printed in 90 minutes, as you see there. Now, when it comes out, it needs some heat treatment, and that part was made of aluminium bronze, so that's going through, you know, that's a good 8-hour heat treatment in a standard furnace. And then you're able to machine it down to that finished product. But that's all in all half a day's work, just over half a day's work versus the supply chain. Another part which might become, you know, in Ukraine right now, we have military needs, we have civil needs. Here's another part that we could talk about. It's an alternator bracket for a G-Wagon. The alternator bracket in the G-Wagon sits underneath, and it was made of plastic, and it was getting ripped off. And again, here's a part which a soldier designed, a soldier printed, machined, and tested. And again, once the hard work's done of designing this stuff, it's done, it's designed. From there on in, you can print as many of these as you want, as often as you want. It gives you an indication when I talk about larger metal parts. You know, it's a 3-kilogram part. It takes just over a couple of hours to print. And you can see the size and the complexity of the geometry. Now, why do I talk about large metal parts, and why do I think this is important for Ukraine? You know, I'm sitting right now in Scotland, so I'm a long way off from what's happening in Ukraine. But if the news is correct, and if we do our research, we understand that Ukrainian forces right now are handling a variety of armored capability coming from a variety of nations. Dozens of nations right now are supplying military equipment. And that military equipment needs to be kept on the road, fighting fit. And it needs parts, but where are the parts coming from? That's a challenge to get those parts. Some of them you're never going to get because they come from Russia. Some of them you'll be lucky to get because the equipment's old and the supply chain struggles. But if you can manufacture those parts in country, close to the customer and the point of need, that has great value to the military campaign that's happening right now. If I was to move on to another part, it's a piece of tooling that we made for the Australian Army. For the M113, in Ukraine right now, you have M113s. You have similar vehicles like the CVRT from the UK. What we might call Vietnam-era agricultural style armored vehicles that are moving and protecting Ukrainian soldiers. The supply chain for those vehicles is extremely fragile and needs support. We believe at Speed 3D, our technology, when it's in theatre, can be bolstering that supply chain and having a great effect. So when I go back to talking about, at the very beginning, Alex and Sergey in Ukraine, trying to have an effect with our industry, with manufacturing, advanced manufacturing, for the right reasons, having real impact of worth. This is what we at Speed 3D are looking to achieve right now. Working with Alex and Sergey, working with other partners in Ukraine and here back in the UK and in the US, looking at avenues as to how we can get this printer, these printers, as many as possible in Ukraine, providing an effect. But it's not just about the military. We need to think beyond Ukraine's victory, which will come, and we have to think about the rebuild, and we need to think about empowering Ukrainian engineers and manufacturers with the equipment to rebuild their own country. And I think this is another important point. Sovereign capability, sovereign manufacturing will be the linchpin of Ukraine's prosperity. post-war. The ability to manufacture and build for themselves and for their own profit in country. And if you can have technology like Speed 3Ds and like Formlabs before, and additive manufacturing as a whole, if we can provide you the latest technology for manufacturing, Ukraine can not only rebuild, but can rebuild as a leading nation using leading technology. And there's an opportunity there for Ukraine to grab. That might seem some time away just now if you're in Ukraine, granted. And I can't imagine what it's like to be there right now, but the rebuild will come. And here at Speed 3D, we want to make sure you're equipped with world-leading technology to be able to get after that challenge. We have a variety of metals that we can use. In fact, the choice of metal is almost endless. Every day, we're advancing our capability with materials. Here is just an example of a valve handle we can make with stainless steel. We can print with stainless steel, hardened steels, aluminium, coppers, nickel alloys, and we're venturing, although not pertinent to this call, into the space industry with our own patented material for satellites. So the range of materials is there to give you a broader capability to be able to manufacture smartly, using the right material for the right application at the right cost, and not being hamstrung with just one or two materials, but genuine flexibility and capability. I might just end with some work we've done recently in the United States. So we were invited to take part in a US military exercise called Project Convergence. And here you can see three pictures. You can see the team set up out in the middle of the American desert, literally in the middle of the American desert. You can see the printer on the right-hand side. That red box designed for a factory setting, surviving the dust storms of the Mojave Desert. And then beneath, you can see some of the parts that we made whilst we were out there. These were deliberate parts given to us by the UK military, specifically because they know there are parts in Ukraine right now which are difficult to source. So on that bottom left, you have a CVRT final drive sprocket wheel. That was a 3-minute design for one of our engineers. And it was a, forgive me, a 2.5-hour print. Now, you can see from that picture, that's not made of steel. We printed that in aluminium, and we did so because that's the powder we had at hand. But to print in steel would be a somewhat longer print, but only marginally, and you would have all the qualities of or beyond of a cast strength steel CVRT sprocket wheel. We were demonstrating, that was a challenge to demonstrate to MOD and to the broader military audience that additive manufacturing in theatre can have a real effect. We know that CVRTs, that sprocket wheel is from a CVRT, are being damaged in Ukraine daily, and that the supply chain can't keep up. And what you need is parts that are strong enough and mission ready. And more importantly, they need to be there. There's no point waiting on the perfect part from the original OEM back in whichever country it's coming from and waiting 3-4 weeks for it. A mission ready, good enough part at the point of use that you can then use is what expeditionary manufacturing is all about. On the bottom right, you can see a couple of heavy duty prints that we did. The top right of that bottom picture, you can see the towing eye of a Warrior infantry fighting vehicle, UK Warrior. And then we had the shackle from a US vehicle. Forgive me, I forget the name of the US vehicle. It was another armored vehicle, and it was a towing shackle, which we printed. And they were bulky prints, you know, they're 20 kilogram plus prints. And again, done quickly at the point of need to near net shape. And you can see there's been a bit of post-processing manufacturing going on with those parts, just to demonstrate the sort of afterwork that might be required. If you're in Ukraine right now and you have needs today, metal needs today, yesterday, tomorrow, please reach out to Speed 3D at the website. They'll put you through to me, and we can start looking at how we can help you. We want to be involved. We want to help. There's no greater mission right now for Speed 3D than Ukraine. So please reach out to us. But if you're thinking longer term and you're thinking about the rebuild and you're a manufacturer in Ukraine and you want a competitive edge to take Ukraine forward, please also reach out, go to the website, go to the YouTube channel, and you can see everything that we're about, and we'd love to talk to you.